Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in on the call. I think we got a little bit of feedback. Maybe Charles, I know you just joined, but I think we're getting some feedback from you.
Hey, Leslie.
Is that Art?
I tried using the go-to thing. Sound doesn't work. Is that working?
Okay, we can hear you though. We just can't see you.
Yeah, it's not. I said many bad words.
Oh, well, don't say that now because everybody's listening in.
I don't know.
All right, we're going to go ahead and kind of start the session with a prayer from our chairman of our Events and Programming Committee, Justin Buckner. Justin is with Sequatchie Concrete. Thanks for kicking off our meeting. Justin, go ahead.
Absolutely. Let us pray. Father God, thank you for the opportunity to gather with the AGC chapter today. We pray that you open our hearts and minds to hear the message our speaker has prepared for us today and use it to better our decision making as we move forward with developing our business plans this year. We thank you for the blessings and the work that you have given us in the past year, and we pray, Father, that you continue to bless us all with your guidance as we move forward during these times. We pray these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Justin, you want to hang on just a second while we make some announcements?
Sure.
Since Justin is the chair of our Events and Programming Committee, we did want to announce a new type of format that we're going to be doing for our webinars and our member meetings going forward, where we are selecting a topic that is timely or important for our members to learn about. And each month, we're going to do a deep dive on that particular topic, whether that's based on growing your business or personal growth or improving your technical skills. So this month, we thought it was very timely to talk about finding stability in uncertain times. And through that, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. That can mean financial stability, that can mean personal growth or overcoming obstacles personally. So we have a full month dedicated to kind of diving into this topic, starting today on just taking a peek at the economic climate, and we'll get into that in a second. I just wanted to talk about what is coming up over the next couple weeks. Next week, we do have a session with the city of Chattanooga. Donna Williams, who's the head of economic development for the city of Chattanooga, is going to be sharing a new utility assistance program that they are going to be launching to help your employees if they have suffered any loss of income or salary over this COVID deal. That would give them up to 3 months of assistance for utility or rent. That's Monday. On Wednesday, we have Dr. Bill Owens, who's the senior pastor of GraceWorks. He's going to be talking about personal resilience during turbulent times. And then next Friday, I really encourage you to join in with a discussion from ABGI Tax Consultants. They're a national tax consulting company, and they have found tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax cuts for construction companies across the country. They're based out of Houston. They're coming to tell our members what those tax credits are and to encourage you to apply for those. And the next week, we have an interesting conversation with a panel discussion with architects, which is always lively, as you know, with Bob Franklin, Trey Wheeler, and David Hudson, who are going to be talking about what they've seen in their pipeline. And what the architects are seeing trickles down to what you're seeing in your job. So they're going to talk about what they have on their plate, and then also the future of building after COVID. So, you know, what are some trends that we'll likely be able to see after COVID? And then finally, we're rounding out the month with, I really encourage everybody to join in on this conversation with Jennifer Harper, who is the founder and president of Bridges Financial Consulting. She's going to be talking about some personal and professional financial preparedness that you need to be doing now if in the event that a year from now the construction industry is going through some turbulent times. So now's the time to start looking at your structure, your financial structure for next year. And hopefully these sessions can help you in a myriad of ways. And then next month, we're going to be talking about making the most of your membership. In August, we're going to be talking about building your dream teams, working with your HR people, talking about how you make your teams work harmoniously. And then in September, we're going to be talking about thinking outside of the box to get results. So how do you employ technology and innovation in accessible ways that will increase efficiency and productivity in your businesses? All that to say, go to our website, look at our newsletters. We got a lot coming up. We got some happy hours. Justin, I know, is chomping at the bit to get everybody together for in-person fun, right? So hopefully we're keeping our fingers crossed that by August we'll be able to get together and see you guys, because we miss everybody. So on to today's session. I think this is a great way to start off this month of finding stability in uncertain times, just getting a bigger picture of what economic development looks like on the regional level. Last month, we heard from Ken Simonson on the national level, but I think this one hits a little closer home. As you know, the way economic development plays out, that is a direct effect on the construction industry. So today, I am very pleased to, well, first, I want to introduce the co-moderator today. Hi, Arch.
Hey, Leslie.
Hi. I'm sure everybody that's watching in knows Arch, but sometimes you don't know everything that somebody is actually doing. So I wanted to tell y'all a little bit about what Arch has been up to these days. You know, he's the president of TU Parks Construction, but he's also the mayor of Lookout Mountain, Georgia. Vice mayor, I'm not the mayor. I'm just the vice. Vice mayor, I'm sorry, I gave you a promotion. He is the vice mayor of Lookout Mountain. He, of course, is the past chairman of AGC of East Tennessee, and he served on the board of directors for 16 years. Yeah. Yeah, and now he's the chairman of AGC's Education and Workforce Development Committee. He's the president of the board of directors for Cornerstone. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and the list goes on and on. So thanks for being here, Arch. And as you know, he's very, I guess we can call him a colorful character. So I'm sure he'll have a lot to things to ask Charles today. And then, of course, we want to introduce to you our esteemed guest speaker today. Charles is the Chief Economic Development Officer for the Greater Chattanooga Economic Partnership. And he is our main guy who's attracting new business and to Chattanooga on a very large scale. He's worked in Texas, he's worked in Alabama. I heard of Charles before I actually moved to Chattanooga when I worked for an economic development agency in Memphis. His reputation, holds up across the state. He is just so well respected. And he's also, he thinks in his role, he's thinking very creatively on how he can attract new business. It can't just be a sterile sell. So Charles is a deep thinker, and many of you may not know this, but he was and is and has been instrumental in helping us lift off the construction center. He was one of the first people that we talked to. We reached out and told him what our thinking was, and immediately he was bringing stakeholders to the table to help us get it moving forward. And without him, that would have been DOA many, many months ago. So I am thrilled to introduce my friend and colleague, Charles Wood.
Thanks, Leslie.
So we just wanted to talk a little bit about what your crystal ball is showing you in terms of economic development, business growth, and then how that might affect our members that are listening in today. So first of all, you know, I'm going to point to Arch for a lot of these questions. So Arch, if you just wanted to kind of kick off.
So Charles, before we go too far, I was reading your bio and I saw that you had a little stint down in Mobile, so I've got to ask the first question: War Eagle or Roll Tide?
I'm when I was there, I was probably leaning more towards Auburn, but that was in the late 90s. So,
Good answer.
yeah, I went to a school that wasn't in the SEC. So people ask me where I went to school, and I'm like, well, you don't care. And so there's some.
Well, I had to get that one out of the way. I went to the so how have you're talking to people. How have you seen what COVID's doing to the pipeline of construction projects in the region? What are people telling you?
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting. Back in middle of March, really for us, everything went dark. For the last 2 weeks of March, it was kind of, people weren't returning phone calls. There just was not a lot of activity. And that kind of started to shift in early April. We started to see really an uptick in kind of project activity for us. And then it's continued to kind of build over time. And so, I'm growing more and more optimistic right now on kind of what we're seeing. I will say though, there's a big difference between the activity we have right now and what we're used to, and the fact that right now there's lots of due diligence happening. There's lots of people kind of spending time understanding the market, I've got a virtual site visit tomorrow, and which is selling Chattanooga on the screen is not quite the same as selling it in person. And so at some point, boots on the ground are going to be required to kind of truth test sites. I mean, companies don't make large capital investments without seeing things, for themselves. And so that's, to me, a big question mark as far as when does that start to gear back up. But overall, I'm a lot more optimistic. I think there are projects that are still going to happen, and I did kind of a similar discussion with a couple of real estate groups, and both of them said nobody is canceling projects. There are lots of them that are getting pushed off and deferred, but nobody is saying we're just not going to do this. So that's kind of, so far, that's definitely what I'm seeing.
Well, if you think about it, contractors or entrepreneurs, the people you're talking to, the people that buy our services, define entrepreneurs. They're not people that are typically sitting in their hands. You're old enough to remember the group The Clash and the song "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" What do y'all do to kind of? I've never missed a day of work during this whole thing. We were considered essential services. And what are y'all doing to try to encourage them to, hey, our world depends on what's construction's 1/7 of gross domestic product, to say, get them going. We're not going to be able to survive off those magic beans that somebody thinks are going to pay for everybody's world.
Yeah. So there's a few things that are kind of happening both at the local level and then kind of at a broader regional and statewide perspective. So we've had a lot of discussions around how we start to help our companies kind of gear back up and open back up. So we've spent time locally on that just to get the local economy moving. And really there's been a host of things. We completely reoriented how our organization works from the chamber side of things. And the last thing was really kind of creating a marketplace almost between producers of PPE and then small businesses that can buy, right? Our bigger companies can go get whatever they want. Frankly, they'll call McKesson and off it comes, but so that they're able to open in a safe manner and do it pretty quickly. So that was kind of first. At the local level now, the discussion is really around recovery and what are steps that need to happen to move that along and move it faster, and what does it look like. I'm anxious over the workforce right now, and certainly the biggest hit in the market is around the hospitality sector. And so I'm excited when I drive down Market Street and I kind of see what Mitch Patel is doing across from the Choo Choo, I think there are a number of players out there in that space that recognize that projects take a while. It's not necessarily where you want to stop it. You may want to slow them down a little. It may not have folks working on the weekend, but there's still a willingness there. My anxiety mostly is around their employee base, because they're figuring out ways to minimize customer touch that will likely decrease. They will likely not hire the same number of people back that they had before.
Mhm.
So that's going to create a pretty big gap, I think, for people that were working in that industry. And frankly, a lot of those people are going to be lower skill, which means they're going to be harder to hire back. And I know Leslie mentioned the construction trades program that y'all are working on, and things like that are going to be pretty critical. So, and then the last thing I'd say is really at the state and kind of national level for us, we're making sure that people understand that prior to March 15th, Chattanooga was on fire. That, really we had a lot of good things going on, and that we view this as a temporary kind of issue from a broader economic standpoint. People are still moving here. People are still buying houses. Companies still need to sell. And so the last kind of big project we worked on was supporting McKee with their $500 million expansion that's going to kind of roll out. And they're moving on that project. They're not going to delay it. For them, that's a critical component. And we know there are lots of other companies that are out there that have to make those decisions. So we're telling that story. And I would say the other component to that is we're reaching out to the kind of the folks that help companies make those decisions. And we're spending a lot of time with them on discussions around supply chain, because that's going to be a big shift, I think, at the global level. So companies that had all of their, whatever their product was made in one plant, or had it all made in one country. The term in the industry is de-risking of the supply chain, and they can't do that anymore. And so our sales pitch is, if it's a company that is not in the Chattanooga market, to kind of help them understand who is in the market, kind of the diversity of the industry base that's here, which is, we're good at making things, right? We make everything from Atlas SUVs to zebra cakes at McKee, and it's everything in between. And so making sure they understand the capacity of the region to deliver from a logistics standpoint is going to be really important for that supply chain discussion.
You can take this anecdotally to kind of add to your the opposite of malaise that we're experiencing. My brother is with the IT with the company that used to run the Chattanoogan before Chattanooga sold the Chattanoogan. That's all they do, is they manage hospitality all over the United States, and their graph is like this. Reservations are through the roof, and so that industry is building back up nationwide. So you take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, and we're a drive-to market, which helps. Honestly, I haven't been on a plane since beginning of March, and I don't have anything scheduled until October, and I don't know if that's going to happen. I used to be very comfortable with a 5-hour drive. I think that's expanding to 8 hours. And so I think that the market here from a hospitality sector will come back faster because we're such a drive-to market.
Have you seen anything with respect to transportation projects bumping up, bumping down, nothing, blah, great?
I'm anxious that the state in particular and states across the Southeast are going to defer. And it's just their tax revenue is going to take a major hit here. And I think we're seeing some of that. I'm a pretty conservative guy, and I love the fact that I can tell people that Tennessee has the best balance sheet in the nation. And a big part of that is because we pay for roads in cash. But one of the problems with that is we pay for roads in cash, which means everything takes longer. And when we don't have that cash coming in, it's going to slow down projects. And so I was really optimistic around kind of the engineering and design work that's already happening for I-24 coming into town. I don't know if folks know that, but that's a kind of an active project where they're doing, I think, right-of-way acquisition and initial design and things like that. I'm worried that that construction piece of that gets pushed off. We're fortunate in that we've got projects that are underway, I think, that are, keeping people at work and making sure they're getting paid. But I think some of the projects that are a little farther out are going to be pushed off because everything is, for the state, everything is driven by, sales tax and gas tax. And if people aren't driving, they're not paying tax. And so that's definitely a risk for us.
True. Wade, you were talking about crystal ball a while ago, or I imagined it. What long-term effects do you see COVID having on the way we all do business?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spent an inordinate amount, I think everybody has, right? We're all zooming. We've spent a ton of time on all these different webinars and education things. And I think the things that I'm hearing that are going to stick, I think that there's going to be a substantial move to work from home. And we do a call, we've been to it once every other week with the CEOs of the largest companies in the region. And so that includes folks like Rick McKinney from Unum, Greg Vital's been on, Eric Fuller from US Express. I mean, we kind of range anywhere from 7 to about 15 folks that are on there. And one of the questions every other week is, when are you bringing people back? And it keeps getting pushed. And so I think Blue Cross said, we're probably going to go to about 53% of the people we had, of our total employment will go back into the office. Now, 30% of the people they had before COVID work from home already. So, but that will have an impact. US Express had 0 people working from home, and they sent 1,400 people home. And so I think that transition is going to be here to stay. I think that there are people who love that and have enjoyed it and the flexibility. So I think there's going to be, I don't think everyone is going to go home and everybody's going to stay home. That's not going to happen. And I think for those that are going to bring their people back, they're going to do it slowly. They're not going to just flip a switch and everybody's coming in at the same time. And that's going to have an impact on office real estate. So the discussion I've had inside with folks at Blue Cross is they're going to use 100% of that building. They're just going to have less people in it, which was interesting to me. And so the floor plate per employee is probably going to grow. Where, I mean, if you went into bellhops locally, people had their elbows could literally touch each other. They're working at a desk with a monitor, 2 monitors in front of them, and they never sat in the same chair when they showed up to work. Those days are probably over. And so I think that there's still going to be that demand for office, but I think that the things like commuting patterns and the number of people that are there and all of that is going to shift. And I don't see it coming back. And we're trying to capitalize on that. I had Dave Flessner call me after he saw a Twitter back and forth with Eric Fuller and some others about it. I mean, our view is that Chattanooga is a very appealing place for people that can work from home, right? That this is a great urban area in a really cool outdoor spot. You can get out of the big city, but still have access to it, right? So if you think of all those people that work in Atlanta, if they don't have to be in the office every day and they go in once or twice a week, I mean, Chattanooga's pretty easy, right? You're in downtown in an hour and a half to 2 hours. So we think we can capitalize on some of that. Part of it will be finding some partners to help us do it, but that'll be a space we kind of work towards.
Let me ask you the antithesis of that question. One of the things that I observed that got the kinks out quickly was home delivery, or my company delivery of food. Because the person I work with, every night we would order dinner here. In the beginning, it didn't work very well. And towards the end, man, that stuff is flawless. But the other side of the equation, the things that we found out that flat do not work. And are you talking to many people that say, hey, look, we tried it and it sucks? And quite honestly, the one I'm thinking of is education. You know, Leslie's got friends, I've got friends, you've got friends, we've all got friends that have got kids at home and going, this is awful. This doesn't work. And as Leslie mentioned, I'm an adjunct at UTC. The lack of the students being able, when I'm talking to students and they don't get what I'm saying, and they tap the person next to them and go, what'd he say? And that little transaction right there, they learn as much from that transaction as they do whatever blather I'm giving them. What have you heard from people that it doesn't work? That are saying, back in the buildings.
Education is going to be, I think, I saw something that was like a meme or something floating around the internet that said my son's teacher lied. He's not a great student. And so I think that I don't think people fully recognized how dependent they were on school systems to help them and to allow their lifestyle to operate. And I mean that at kind of the K through 12, right? And then I think that there's going to be, I mean, the whole thing has been a massive stress test across industry sectors, but I think that kids are going to have to end up back in school, and it's going to be really complicated to make it happen. And I think there's a lot of requests, I won't say expectations, that are being made on the school systems to figure out how to make it work, and there's no resources to do it. So I think it's going to be, I mean, if you ask me who has the hardest job in town, I'd say it's Brian Johnson. That figuring out how that's going to work is going to be really complicated, and he's not going to be handed more resources from the state to make it happen. So I think you're right in that sector. I don't think that's going to change. I will say, I think in higher ed, it's going to shift. I think there's going to be, it's not to say that in-person will go away, but I think hybrid is going to gear up pretty substantially, where there's a mix of online and in-person. I think we're going to see that. It was already happening. I think we're going to see it happen faster. I think that sector is frankly due for a change on some of these things, and I think they're kind of being forced into how they look at it.
Again, anecdotally, I can tell you the students that I talk to at UTC hate it. They hate online. They'd like
absolutely.
They like to interact with people.
And I think generally the teachers do too. And so my wife is on faculty at Chat State, and I mean, part of the reason why teachers do what they do is because they want that interaction with their students. I mean, they don't want to look at a screen all day. So
I don't want to look at my little gray hair right there. I'd rather look at the student.
So, I do think that starts to go back, certainly at the K through 12 level, it's going to go back. You're going to have students that are in there, and we as a nation are dependent upon that structure unless things change. It's just not going to happen. And the trends that we've seen before COVID are speeding up, right? I mean, you mentioned home delivery, e-commerce is going to really gear up. I think that if you kind of watched some of the comments that came out around CBL, I mean, retail is struggling more and more, and so I think that will continue. And then the questions around reuse of space are going to be, I think, really big questions. One of the things I've seen is that there are department stores that have been converted into major commercial kitchens to just make to-go food that is then delivered by service to your house, which I thought was astounding. So I think that as you look at those trends around e-commerce, it's gonna continue to grow without a doubt. I think that how we communicate, I mean, who would have thought we would be having video conferences, not just every day, but multiple times a day, even 3 years ago. And so I think that the days of, and I heard a CEO say this, the days of a one taking a flight for one meeting and flying back, those days are over. That's just not going to happen. So I think there's some things like that there will definitely be a shift. But I will also tell you, I spent time, and I try to be kind of a student when I travel, and we headed down and did an Airbnb kind of deal on the Gulf Coast a couple weeks ago, and basically sheltered in place at the beach instead of sheltered in place in Chattanooga. And I looked out the window and it was like nothing had ever happened. So I think we're hitting a point where people have reached their peak of what they can deal with. There you go. And they're going to go back to kind of doing what they were doing before, unless there are requirements on them that don't do that. And I think that's part of what's driving, what you see in the hospitality sector, that, you know, that kind of going like this instead of, I think people have reached that peak. And I think it's just going to be things where, I don't say just, it's going to be things where they didn't really like to do it before, like getting on an airplane, right? It was, I mean, let's face it, it's a pain. And so things like that, this gives them another excuse not to do it. And so I think that's where, and then they've adopted things that make their lives easier, right? You know, it's a whole lot easier to go out and pick up 4 packages a day than, you know, go to Walmart or, you know, go to the mall or whatever. I think people who are on the fence, you know, I think have had to adopt these things, and they're done now.
What are the big priorities for the chamber right now, besides this?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. You know, we just went through a year-long planning process around our strategic plan, which is called Chattanooga Climbs. We raised a pile of money around it. A number of your members are partners in that, and we appreciate it. And so, you know, right now, it's interesting. We've kind of gone back through the plan, right? You know, I spent a good chunk of the first couple of weeks in April going, okay, are we going to do this? I mean, like, what's in here and how's this impacted? And what's different for us is 13% unemployment. And so everything we were working on the talent side, you know, we had to kind of take that lens of what happens if it's 10 to 15% unemployment for the next year or so. How do we do things? Do we need to do things differently? But the reality is things like the training center, there's a drastic lack of highly skilled individuals around a number of sectors that are important to Chattanooga. Construction is one of them. And I know the discussions we had last fall and earlier this year, right? The reality is you have a lot of people that are retirement age that are very skilled, and they're going to leave. I mean, whether you want them to or not, they're leaving, and they have to be replaced. Like we have to create a pipeline for that. That's true with, you know, maintenance workers in manufacturing. That's true with technology workers. So none of that really changes. You know, what does impact it is the resources. And so, I mean, there was $22 million in the governor's budget for an advanced manufacturing center for Chattanooga State and TCAT that was going to come into Chattanooga, and it was going to be in this year's budget. It's not. So we lose at least a year on that. I've got a meeting right after this to talk venture funding with 7 high net worth individuals that have invested in early stage companies before in Chattanooga. And if we're going to continue to grow our entrepreneurial base, we've got to have that funding. We've got to have people that are willing to put capital to risk to support entrepreneurs. And so it's actually it sounds weird, it's a really good time to have that conversation. Normally, everybody who is in that meeting would be so hard to nail down, especially, you know, in June, they'd be running to the beach or in New York or whatever they'd be dealing with. And because the stock market has mostly come back, I think, you know, they're not in terrible positions with where they're at. So that conversation happens now, maybe while we're not as focused on some other things. So, you know, we're still focused on that. And I think from the business development side, travel has been killed for me, which is a big part of what I do. I mean, people don't make decisions, you know, like this. They don't make decisions with a screen. They'll take in information, but they're not going to make a decision. And so that's been pushed off.
That's a great way of putting that. They don't make decisions by a screen. I like
No, I mean, it's not going to happen. So I think that, that because that travel's been pushed off, there's going to be things that are going to be delayed around that. And we had a number of, our plan was to host a couple of events a year where we're bringing corporate executives and bringing in site selection consultants into Chattanooga. So that's probably not going to happen for another year or so. And so we're working on figuring out how to make up for that right now, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. And then I'd say kind of the last thing, on that front it was in the plan, and it's basically the term we've used is economic inclusion. And so this is around how do we make sure that all parts of Chattanooga are benefiting from, the economic success we've had. That was the way the plan was written before. Obviously we're not in a period of great economic success right now. But for those of you that, if you're not too young, what an 8-cylinder car is. And that if you have 8 cylinders, it's not good if you're only running on 7, right? Like that's not good. And Chattanooga has been running on 7 cylinders for a while. And so we need that last one to really come online if we're truly going to be successful as a community. And so that's really what economic inclusion is about. That's making sure that there's workforce training and there's opportunity, and that companies are thinking about hiring a diverse set of employees that, maybe they're ex-offenders, maybe they're folks who, didn't do great in high school, but they have they have the ability to adopt a pretty good skill set that's going to help them with maintenance work at a manufacturer or, customer service from a call center or whatever that is. And so that for us is important. I would tell you it's gotten a lot more important in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm an economics guy. And so I'm not saying that, you fix everything with money, but I do think that if you give more people opportunity, especially people that haven't had it, you're going to improve a lot of lives.
Absolutely. In construction, we recognize that there's a disparity. And if you can go to any construction site and look around, and it is not representative of our community at all. And so part of this construction center is training a workforce that we haven't reached out to before. Because, quite frankly, the people that we've been trying to recruit into construction, it's not working. So we have to find a new market to bring into construction to get them excited about it. And it's so easy to see that is, a good fit for us. And also, I'm with you when it comes to, economic development. When you have a huge segment of your community that's suffering, that brings down your whole community. So giving people opportunity to improve their lives, I think is, something that our organization is definitely going to be focusing on as well. Art, you have anything else in your mind?
Thanks so much, Charles.
Absolutely. And I do want to say, because we didn't really talk about it, but it's not my day job. It's kind of funny, right? I'm not the talent guy, but I am incredibly passionate about the discussion that's happened and the push for this Construction Trades Academy, construction training center. I cannot tell you how important I think it is. I think that it has the potential certainly to help the industry in Chattanooga and the region, but I think it has substantial potential really to be a model for the state and the Southeast. And so I would just say, and I told Leslie this, I was like, hang in there, we're going to make this happen. And so I'm 100% committed to it. The chamber is committed to it. And we're definitely going to find a way. I hate, again, kind of going back to that advanced manufacturing center, I hate that this is causing a delay in a lot of things where, we were really pushing for some capital, but it's important and it needs to stay a priority. So I appreciate you guys and your members and getting behind that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And we will be talking with you soon. We really appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Bye, y'all.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Peace.